Welcome back to Getting Closure for Your Business and You. I'm James. I'm here with Cheryl Stainsby from Your Directors Advocate. Hello again, Cheryl.
Hi, James.
So last time, Cheryl, we talked about what's it really worth, sort of the business that you've worked and strived all your life for or had many years for, and it comes time to sell or to get away or to close it down, and it mightn't be worth quite as much as you thought. Now, especially what do you do then if that's not worth as much as you thought and you've got some debts that are more than what you're likely to get? So what's that scenario? Do you see it often, and what should someone do?
We do see it often, and we often find that people sometimes are reluctant to sell because there's not enough money to cover the debt of the business.
They sort of hang on.
They hang on. Sometimes they just shut it down and walk away.
Yeah, right.
And, you know, I think what people often don't realise, or sometimes they get a little bit defensive and say, well, you know, I'm not going to sell it to Fred Smith for less than what I think it's worth. But the reality is that if they do sell and they get less money than they need to cover their debts, well, that's still not the end of the world, because you can still then use that money to appoint an insolvency practitioner to finalise the affairs of your business and make sure that it's finalised in such a way that it's not hanging over your head for the next 2 years, 3 years, or, you know, you haven't got creditors chasing you.
So you're saying you wouldn't go straight off to... So it's like you're not dead, so you don't go straight to the undertaker straight away. You talk about what you've got to do first. So you go and get some advice from somebody such as yourself, who's a director's advocate, about, hey, what are my options here? What's the process to make sure that I'm, you know, compliant with all the laws and all that sort of stuff? Yeah,
that's right. And you know, depending on whether there's just you working in the business or whether you've got an employee working in the business, it may be that there's some suppliers that are owed money. It may be that there's some superannuation owed if you've employed staff. It may be that if you get some money for the business but not all that you want, that you're able to pay some of the debts of the business. And if that happens, it's really important to get advice because there is some debt that's a priority. Staff superannuation, for example, is a priority and it always needs to be paid first. So you might get some advice as to which debts need to be paid first.
And we've sort of done that, haven't we? We've sort of covered off on all the ones, and certainly I encourage people listening today to make sure that they've heard the ones about the sort of debts you might be liable for.
Yeah.
So if your company's been... We're talking about companies here in this particular situation, so your accountant or someone set you up a PTY Ltd company, might or might not have a family trust or something associated with it. You've got a few things you've got to do if you've got to shut the thing down, especially if it's got some money outstanding against it. A lot of these cases too, part of the reason why you're saying, Cheryl, I take it, is that a lot of those debts, like we've talked about before, might be owed by the company, but the bank or the photocopier company or the trade suppliers got you on the hook as well, just in case. So you might have some personal debts that you've got to try and sort. They've got to be in the back of your mind as well as trying to sell out of the business. How often do you see people in this situation? How often do you see this?
Frequently.
Yeah, right.
Frequently. There's a lot of small businesses that fall into this category. And to be honest with you, James, sometimes it's not even a matter of putting the company into liquidation. Sometimes where there's a lot of personal liability, we have to sit down and discuss with the business owner whether filing for bankruptcy is a better option. If there's very limited funds and there's a lot of personal liability, then sometimes filing for bankruptcy might be the better option than actually liquidating the company.
And that's a lot to accept for a person who's worked for years, and then that's the thanks they get.
Absolutely,
but,
yeah. And you can understand why people just don't do anything and often just shut the doors.
The Australian way is kind of ignore it.
And walk away and just wait for nature to take its course.
Or wait for someone to knock on the door. So I suppose what we're saying here then is don't wait for the knock on the door. If it's get advice, not only from an accountant, but it's probably also from like a person who specialises in the area, which is a bit of a sell, but the idea is that understand, put your arms around what you got.
Yeah.
So then you know what you're up for if you want to shut it down or try and sell it.
That's
because,
right, yeah.
you mightn't get everything you need. Great, okay, let's keep talking. A reminder that these podcasts are general in nature and do not constitute advice, and they don't take into account your personal circumstances. So if you think, though, that some of the issues raised might apply to you, you should seek qualified financial, legal or counselling advice.